Okay, past paper questions. Now, interestingly, there were only two that I could find in the entire bundle of past papers, and the second one of these was in the sample assessment material. The first one, an institute for ICT technicians in schools and colleges operates a code of conduct, describe the purpose. So for 2 marks, it sets out the professional standards required by the institute, and the code of conduct includes standards for professional competency and integrity. I don't think we need to elaborate on that too much there, as that's essentially what the question was. What is it? 2 points. Just describe it as clearly and eloquently as you can. Part B, identify 2 standards that could be included. And this we get a few more options here. So you could say, only do work that's within your competence, and we talked about that at length. Not claim competency as a technician you don't possess, and that's important as well. To continue developing your professional knowledge and your skills, and that's important to make sure that you're always up to date and know what you're doing, or ensure you have the knowledge of the laws and the legislation in carrying out your responsibilities. Any 2 of those would have given you the marks there. Part C, identify 2 standards that should be included in the code for professional integrity. All right, so integrity, that's your moral standings really. Respecting alternative viewpoints and seeking and accepting honest criticism. Avoiding injuring others, their property, their reputation by false, malicious, or negligent action or inaction. That's a pretty loaded comment there, but basically don't injure others in any way by any means. And reject and will not make any offer of bribery or unethical inducement in relation to exams or coursework. Now, it's particularly important for IT technicians because you can imagine in schools, IT technicians are the people that receive the exam work the day before and have to load it onto the computer systems. If you remember all the way back to your GCSEs and the practical unit in your GCSEs, the exam technicians would have received those question papers and those electronic files the night before to load them into the exam accounts. Now, it is important, therefore, that they don't take bribery to leak those questions out so people could prepare for them and overinflate their grades. And that ties into confidentiality, respecting the privacy of the pupils, the exams and staff, not laughing about an exam a pupil got, or giggling at mistakes staff are making, or going through their files just to be nosy. Now, this question, although it's only 6 marks, has the world's longest mark scheme. And I make no apologies for the fact I'm going to go through all of them. So, in the programming industry, professional codes of conduct are used extensively, and they set rules that should be followed by programmers. State 6 reasons why programmers are required to follow rules under a professional code of conduct. Each reason must relate to a specific rule. So some of this will overlap with the previous question, but in each case we're explaining why that's important. So again, be prepared, long mark scheme this one. Okay, so we're giving 1 mark for each valid reason, up to 6. No marks for stating the rules. We need to give the reason, so it's the rule and the reason that gets you the mark. And if the rule is implicit, like data must be kept safe to prevent data from being stolen that could cause embarrassment, then that implied is given a mark. And again, this is indicative content. It's some of these, or all of these, or similar things. It doesn't have to be word for word exact. But it's nice to see how the exam board expect us to answer before we attempt it. So here's one here. Programmers should have due regard for public health, privacy, security, and well-being of others and the environment. This will ensure that no harm, physical, emotional, financial, comes to individuals from not taking these factors into account. All right, yeah, okay. So one of the rules should be not to cause any harm. And the reason for that is we don't want that to happen. That's morally repugnant to cause injury to people by what we're doing. We also need to take due regard for legitimate rights of a person or organisation, so that makes sure that we respect their rights. And that could be in the handling of data, GDPR for instance, or it could just be on the individual human rights of that person. Programmers should conduct their professional activities without discrimination, and this will make sure that nobody is discriminated against or denied their own rights. And this is especially important for the disabled community, because we do need to be considerate when we build software that there are accessible options, that it's not entirely visual, so people with visual disabilities suffer, that there are different input methods so that people with motor disabilities don't suffer or are unable to use our products. Programmers should promote equal access to the benefits of IT and seek to promote the inclusion of all sectors in society so there is no technological gap. We must always remember that there is a technological gap in society. Having access to technology gives you access to a whole market and information medium that you wouldn't have otherwise. We need to ensure that we promote inclusion in that. Programmers should also not claim any level of competency that they don't possess, and that safeguards your employer from placing a program on a task that they can't complete or would need to be trained to complete or may complete poorly. Programmers should develop their professional knowledge ongoing, and this ensures that products are contemporary and modern. You wouldn't want somebody that trained in the 1970s and didn't look at a single piece of modern computer code since then to be building your new web app, because it would probably be command line and it would probably be written to run on DOS. Programmers should ensure that they have the knowledge and understanding of legislation and they comply with it. It's to make sure that you don't accidentally break a law whilst you're building some software. Programmers should respect and value alternative viewpoints and ask for and accept honest criticisms. And that makes sure that what you're doing is the most relevant approach and the one chosen is always the best. Now, great examples of this are often from user interfaces. Showing people user interface designs and taking the criticism and improving from that leads to better user interfaces. It's very easy to get stuck in your own mental models when you're developing software, and therefore somebody else saying, well, why didn't you do it like this? Or, well, I didn't really understand how that worked, is useful because it means that you're looking at other mental models in order to make your software better. Programmers should avoid injuring others, their property, reputation, or employment by false or malicious or negligent actions. And this makes sure that staff take account of other people and don't take risks that could injure other people. So, for instance, altering a program that might accidentally delete work for somebody else. Programmers should reject and not make any offer of bribery, so we don't want there to be any implication of corruption within the company, no disclosure of sensitive data if you're offered an incentive to do it. The selling of location data was big business, and this is quite rampant in some weather apps that you may have downloaded because they have to ask for permission for your location. And of course, weather apps always get that permission because it makes sense why a weather app would want your location. But what a lot of them have started doing, which is a bit morally dubious and would certainly be outside the realms of a code of conduct, is in the background then they are selling that data on so that people can track and advertise to you. Programmers should carry out their professional responsibilities with due care and diligence in regard to their employer's requirements. And this will make sure basically that everything's done to the client's specifications, time and money is not wasted in doing your own thing. Programmers should seek to avoid any situation that may give rise to a conflict of interest between them and their employer. So basically, this would be a situation where you're asked to develop a piece of software that does something that you might have an interest in. So you might want to hobble that software or not make it quite as good as the software that you're already producing. And yes, this mark scheme is still going. It's quite a comprehensive one. This one says programmers should accept professional responsibility for their work and the work of colleagues who are defined in a given context as working under their supervision. And basically this gives you ownership of the work. People are less likely to be negligent if they are personally responsible for the actions of a piece of software. Programmers should not disclose or authorize to be disclosed for use of personal gain or to benefit a third party confidential information except with their permission. So this would be not talking about a client or their work. If you work for Apple, not leaking to the press what they're doing behind the scenes that's top secret, those sorts of things. Programmers should not misrepresent or withhold information on the performance of products. Or take advantage of a lack of relevant knowledge. You shouldn't be making financial or other gain from overstating something. You can't say this product does everything when it only does a small subset of those things. Programmers should accept their personal duty to uphold the reputation of the profession and not bring it into disrepute. And this means that we ensure that our profession remains highly regarded. Programmers should encourage and support fellow members in their professional development, so that means we help other people improve their skills and bring the overall industry up as a result. Programmers should seek to improve professional standards through participation in the development, use and enforcement, so we look at the professional standards and we make sure to enforce them amongst other people. And programmers notify the employers if convicted of a criminal offence. Now this is quite a scary one. Any criminal offence should be informed to the employer so that the employer can take a judgment as to whether the risk of having that employee working on a piece of software is worthwhile or not. For instance, an employee convicted of a motoring offence, particularly say multiple speeding offences, probably not the best person to have working on speed camera software.